Welcome back to the Valor Flight Crew podcast, hosted by Echo and brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and Vertical Valor magazine. In today's episode, we sit down with researcher and industry expert Russell Griffin for an honest and eye-opening conversation about what truly drives safety culture. Together, we unpack the human side of aviation safety, exploring how communication, trust, and vulnerability influence the decisions crews make under pressure. Russell shares his personal journey and groundbreaking research on crew dynamics, leadership, and the powerful role of safety voice in keeping teams aligned and patient safe. From the realities of high-stress environments to the impact of organizational structures on well-being, this episode sheds light on the internal and external pressures that shape situational awareness and performance in critical moments. It's a conversation about leadership, accountability, and recognizing the good, because building a positive safety culture isn't just policy, it's people. Buckle up, this is an episode you won't want to miss. Thank you to our sponsors, Spectrum Aeromed, Copter Safety, and Precision Aviation Group.
Welcome to the Valor Flight Crew podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and Vertical Valor magazine. Produced in partnership with Echo, Every Coast Helicopter Operations. The Valor Flight Crew podcast promotes the personnel and life-saving equipment behind helicopter air ambulance services. Join hosts Mike Fideli and Blake Schreider for in-depth interviews and expert insights from air medical personnel, pilots, communication specialists, and maintenance crews who play critical roles in airborne emergency response.
Line 1 accepting.
Copy, line 1, gotcha, accepting. You're going to be talking to Red Feather 1 on LCEMS.
I think it's funny, you bringing up that point though, Russell, and talking through this whole process. And I think back to many interviews that I've had in my career. And one of the questions that's asked is, okay, you're in this difficult situation. How are you going to handle that? Well, one, I haven't had any formal training on how to handle this. So I'm just going to make it up as I go along. And I think very much anecdotally, it's been what kind of experience I have in my career to that point, dealing with difficult situations along the way. But I've never practiced that. I've never had that conversation with my crew. I've never trained with my crew of how to figure that out in that situation. Because I still think that it's something that's very, very prevalent today. I think back to, a lot of the new clinicians that I have that I'm training on a regular basis. And now they're off orientation, and try to do a mentorship with them a little bit further on. And one of the things that always comes up is I ran into this difficult situation and I wasn't sure how to bring it up and talk about it. Like that is a classic conversation that is had. And it hasn't always been, it hasn't been a safety thing with flight, but it could be a patient safety thing. It could be a process improvement thing within the organization. Like they just don't know how to be able to have those conversations and bring it up. And I think you're absolutely right. I love where you're going with that. Like, but it seems, most of us are probably going to like gawk at it. Like if you come into work today and the three of us working together, like, okay, we're going to go through an exercise on how to handle the situation. In probably most companies, we're all going to sit here and be like, are you kidding me? Right? Yeah. No. Right. But like, it is an essential skill that we need to be able to have and to know how you're going to handle that situation.
Well, I'll give you the textbook answer to it from an academic's perspective. And this is going to come from the sense of both voice, speaking out, but also listening. Safety listening is going to be the part that I really hope I can encourage you all to become advocates of. So we typically communicate in the safety aspect in 4 dimensions. So the first one is going to be strong safety voice, right? Strong safety voice is going to be this is dangerous, right? And that can be, hey, we need to turn around. And that's actually, it's going to be positive and it's going to have an action-oriented substance to it. So I am declaring something and I'm giving an action. And I've been in that situation. I have had strong safety voice scenarios. It's typically going to be a crew dynamic that I'm very comfortable with, people I've worked for a long time. This is not my junior composition. The other one is going to be this sort of cautionary safety voice. Cautionary safety voice would be like, man, if we keep going, this could really get ugly, right? So I'm offering caution, but without action. I'm telling you that, man, it really is starting to get a little bit more out here. And I'm just kind of navigating around the story. It's not strong safety voice because I didn't give you an action to take.
Right.
We have another one where we can do this sort of inquisitive safety voice. And inquisitive is like, do you think it's going to get worse up ahead? Mm-hmm. Do you think, are we going to be like running late? Are we going to make it on time? Do we have enough fuel? Right. So you're asking these kind of questions. And the third is, and the fourth, it's really like the weakest form is going to be this informative. This informative safety voice is like, it looks nasty ahead. Well,
Yeah.
what am I doing? Whenever I
Excellent.
enter any of these conversations, I'm testing our social bonds.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sense of a situation, right? So I'm independently on a sense making journey. And what I'm doing, this is the safety listening part. This is the cues that as crew members we must train in to become oriented to. That's a cue that somebody has a concern. That is the cue. They are speaking up. But if we dismiss them, right, if we revert right to this path of saying, well, I've been a pilot for 30 years and this is normal, we just literally severed off that relationship from the ability of that person to go higher up, right?
Yeah.
And so this gets a really interesting dynamic. And this is kind of back to that why, what, how, right? So if we respond with a, well, why do you think that? The conversation's cut off.
Yeah.
We have to go down the path of saying, well, what makes you think that, right? One of my favorite authors, former FBI investigator Chris Voss, uses these techniques of mirroring and labeling. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with those, but mirroring is pure ninja work in social sciences. It's just simply where you repeat the last three things, the last three words that somebody says. I think it's looking worse up there. And then the respondent says, it's looking worse up there. What I'm doing is I'm inviting that person to explain without judgment. Like, well, instead of saying, well, why do you say that? Or why, like taking it as a criticism. But anyways, I think that those are, what we realize is we don't have this nice, clean cut, stop, go. It's just very like, well, that's kind of, this isn't cool. Or it might even be an observation that's not related to your own personal risk. It might be like, yeah, we got this. What do you mean we got this, right? And of course, that's where the famous "we'll give it a try" came from. We know that's going to be the disastrous signal.
Right.
Well, I will say that this year, as part of our annual training, one of our scenarios that they gave us was a crew resource management type scenario. They made a
It's awesome.
as best as they could as a not a simulator, but they said it's you and your partner. You're in the back. You have a patient that was a chest pain, and
Again.
just do this scenario. And all of a sudden, the pilot, they used radios and stuff. It was really cool. And pilot says, "Hey, we're about 3 minutes out from landing, and I've lost all comms with ATC. I have no working radios. The lights are out on this. I need you to handle this because I got to fly." And it was just so interesting because it really invoked that thought. And then they're like, bam, your patient codes, and it was like, what do you do?
Of course.
But it was really interesting to just have, I've never done that before, having these.
I know, it's great.
It was really good because the
I don't know how Rob is
conversations
gonna
became,
edit this.
Yeah, so I'll say that I think that's great. Honestly, the fact that y'all are doing some situational behavior simulation is key. And I'll say I wasn't always the most popular FTO. In fact, I got suspended maybe from being an FTO a couple of times. So but I should disclose this. I'm not your smoking jacket and pipe PhD. Okay, I literally hold a GED. As I mentioned earlier, I wasn't a good student, and I was not a good crew member at times. So I'll say this much, that the fact that y'all are even spending time doing that's amazing, because I could not explain that as a clinician. I believe that you need to be at the level of excellence that you can be eyes out of the aircraft at any phase of flight, right?
Sure.
And I think as far as clinical decision making, our ability to not put a train wreck in the back of the aircraft where we're not going to be capable of looking eyes out is a whole other element. And that's really where I do hope organizations have pilots interviewing crew members and crew members interviewing pilots. I really do hope we're doing that, because that dynamic and that element is going to be huge. But at the end of the day, man, if you got to go hands off a patient, if you got to put down the BVM for us to get on the ground safely, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
It's a tough job, That's just what it is.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't matter whether you're in a helicopter, ambulance, whatever. If something came up that you had to make an immediate decision to keep everybody safe, you have to do what you have to do.
Yeah, very true.
And I know those situations, Blake, that you were talking about with, having, that in-flight emergency, then followed by your patient emergency afterwards, that, all of us going through a simulation like that, we're going to be like, are you kidding me? How is this even realistic? But realistically,
Right.
Murphy is alive and
Right,
well.
yeah.
And if I ever meet him in a dark alley with no witnesses,
Yeah.
but like when it rains, it pours. And
Right.
so when one thing happens, it just is always this cascade effects. And so that's going to be the time when your patient is going to code, when you're having that in-flight emergency as well, because nothing is going to be going right on that situation. But I think to be able to have that communication as a crew, and not only that voice, but being able to listen to the situation is certainly paramount. Because I feel like if you don't have those things in place, if you don't have that open communication, if you aren't actively listening to not just what your crew members are saying, but how they're saying it, and being inquisitive and trying to get to the bottom of where some of those conversations or those concerns or those comments are coming from, I think on the other shoe is where it starts to increase our overall pressure to continue this flight. And that feeling of, oh no, my crew members, are going to think differently of me, or they're not going to want to fly with me again, or they're going to perceive me as being lazy, or like all of these things that start running through our mind because we can never come up with any positive correlation to those two things. Like, how does that organizationally really start to affect us in the long run, especially when we start talking about those like external pressures?
Oh, yeah. So what's, the whole pressure to fly conversation is one that's really interesting and dynamic, because we're not special, contrary to what we'd like to think. And sorry if your mom told you were, and I just broke the bad news. I hate to be that guy. But yeah, so in other organizational research, it's typically referred to as production pressure, right? And that's the same common sense that, everybody, doesn't matter if you're working on an oil rig or if you're making door handles in a door handle factory, you have production pressures.
Yeah.
Where I think, of course, gets interesting in high risk occupations is when we start thinking about the external pressures. We're talking about organizational pressures that are pushing you to a point that are beyond your own personal safety kind of barriers.
Yeah.
The challenge to that is there's not a really good way to define that. Like, what is a person's like individual safety barrier? Because that's all wound up into things like their personality, their risk aversion, their experience, their understanding of a situation. But some of it's pretty much no-brainer stuff, right? So if you felt pressured to continue a flight despite feeling unsafe, like if you're feeling unsafe, that's like a pretty good measure of it. What I don't like is when we use this conversation around uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is like, what the heck does that even mean? Like, what do you mean you're uncomfortable, right? I mean, it's 3:00 in the morning. It's 20 degrees outside. It's uncomfortable, right? So I think we have to take that conversation further and say, well, what are we doing that's actually making our crew members experience this pressure to fly? And we know that it can be pretty significant externally. But that's really why I opened up some of the research and looked into trying to attribute, is pressure to fly the thing? Is this like production pressure and this rescue mindset and the mission mindset? Is that actually a thing? But what we find out is, I mean, if I look at the data, there's 63 fatalities in return to base accidents in the last basically 40 years, right? We're talking about 48 accidents. 28 in repositioning flights have resulted in 15 fatalities. So 1/5 of all of our air medical accidents attributed to fatalities are going to be due to these non-high pressure scenarios.
Yeah.
So when we start to try to unpack this, one of the things that I wanted to do was move past, I see it all the time. I see it in the discussion boards. I hear it in conversations like, pressure to fly, pressure to fly. I'm like, okay, well, help me operationalize that. So I did. Psychometrically, I operationalized it. Created a question set that includes a few of these indicators, right? We answer on a Likert scale. Distributed that in all of the research that I've done. And I've asked people, like, do you experience these things? Things like, and this is where I use uncomfortable a little bit in the middle, management questions, flights, turn downs in a way that's uncomfortable, right? So that's actually something that's not comfortable. And you're going to, like, if you've experienced that, it's like, ding, ding. Yeah, I know what that means, right? Because you really shouldn't have management questioning turn down. It should be like, I'm glad you turned it down. Like, what happened? Let us know what it is so we can promote it. It certainly is this other things like taking risks beyond my own personal safety measures. But what I found is, like, on average, the participants in all of my research, on a Likert scale, like 1 to 5, were scoring in this like 2.35, 2.5 range, where they're all exhibiting some sort of pressure to fly that's both internal as well as external. And that's concerning, because we're not talking about just general, it's assumed I'm going to take risk. I mean, yeah, that's assumed. But we're actually talking about people experiencing a psychological pressure that's beyond what they consider to be inside of their personal safety limit. And that's something that as organizations, like in crew members, we must become aware of it, and we must label it, and we must talk about it, because that pressure to fly can come down from, I spent my entire career trying to be here, so I'm going to do this no matter what. That's an internal pressure. I have role identity. That's an internal pressure. I mean, I'm devastated to see what's happened in our industry in some organizations where the pressure to fly is explicit and it's very known. And people are told, like, make another flight, we make our numbers. I mean, that just breaks my heart that anybody could work for an organization like that. But yeah, the pressure to fly research is just, it's fascinating, because what I want to do is open it up further to say it's not just pressure to fly. We're out here doing things, and things are happening that are bad in non-pressure situations. Mm-hmm. So back to the question earlier you raised, if we're on an RTB and I'm freaking exhausted, I'm absolutely worn out, right? I don't have my eyes out, and something happens. The pilots maybe their eyes in, maybe their eyes out. Like, how am I holding myself accountable for that? Like, what is this? It turns into a really weird conversation. But yeah, I'll pause there. But yeah, this is one of my favorite topics.
I think it does, but at the same time, like I absolutely know that every single one of us in our career have gone through that, RTB flight, and sometimes don't even remember how you got from point A to point B. Yep. Like we're still replaying the call in our head. We're thinking about the plans we have after work. We're thinking about, a text message that we got just before we, lifted. Like, all of these things are happening. So I think that any one of us would be lying if we said we have not had that happen on, an RTB flight kind of thing. And so is those external pressures, are those the things that are causing us to kind of veer off in that particular moment and not really, being true to what we're supposed to be doing at that point in time, and engaging in our crew the way that we're supposed to be engaging, and following the things that we need to do with, eyes out, or calling things out. But we've all been there, right? Mm-hmm. Like I can easily think of, probably more than on two hands. Obviously been flying a few years now, but way more two hands where that has been a circumstance. And I think to myself afterwards, I'm like, man, that wasn't good. I need to not do that again. But it's happened again, because like it's all these external factors and pressures and things that are going on in either personal life or professional life, or the bad call that we just had, or those kind of things. So I think it's a challenge sometimes to be able to have that, like, we let our guard down and our mind just starts going in all of these different directions, that I think it's sometimes hard to focus on those low pressure situations. I don't know.
That's a can of worms. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, it's fast. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I have a question about, Russell. I don't know. I'm really interested to hear your take. Who the hell designed our schedules,
you just nailed it,
for 24-hour shifts, right? And now look, like, when we look at the air medical transport, the critical care aspect, right? We are not busy the entire duration of 24 hours like, our fellow coworkers and crew members that are on ambulance, ground transports, or whatever, right? And maybe your program, you do both, so there's a wide variety mix, right? But who the hell said, hey, pilot, you are going to work 7 days in a row, but then you're going to get 7 days off. And then those 7 days on, you're going to work for 12-hour shifts, right? And then there's some places like ours that they start off on days, and then there's a transition into nights during that 7 day period. Right. And, maybe that's the same elsewhere. Who the hell ever thought that for something so demanding and requires so much, there's so much human factor. We've already established that. Why would you want to be so tired, and then, and you get sleep debt, you get all these things that build up day after day? Who designed that?
It's a great question. And, as we know, these are just the inherited traits from our counterparts in similar industries. But I think in Mike, to your point, this is the root, if you will, of the fit for duty conversation. And it's one that gets really uncomfortable. And I say that as somebody who is not the best crew member, right? I say that as somebody who came to work from a job off, right? I'm not coy about that, because I hope somebody can hear, even my reflections on this and go, this is not coming from an ivory tower. But I think it's huge. I mean, this, I think it's back to this sort of industry identity challenge. Like, what are we doing here? So are we Blue Angels or not? Right. I'll draw on that conversation from what you had in your last podcast episode.
Yeah.
And do we hold a mindset that we're here for excellence? And that's the accountability that I'm going to hold myself to. And that's the accountability I'm going to hold you to. Well, that means that we're not hangry. Sorry. You know, I know that's everybody's like, it's a
guilty.
thing. Yeah, totally. Right.
It is absolutely a thing.
I mean, I don't know as a man, God bless our aviators, right? I don't think I can handle it. I probably was a diva, and I've worked with some divas before, and that's sad to say. Like, I imagine that the
all of my partners are laughing hysterically right now listening to this. So,
because they have snacks. Just
we can feel comfortable that the self-loading luggage comment was a reflection of somebody who was hangry at probably 2 o'clock in the morning.
That's entirely possible.
Yeah. And I was just as bad, right? I mean, I was the kind of like, just don't talk to me between like 2 and 4 a.m. during the witching hours. Leave me alone. And we're going to be cool, right?
And make sure I've had my coffee if we do have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think you're actually asking the right questions. And the right questions is, what are we? So I think one of the most difficult things is, as an industry, as crew members, this is like true in life. What are you willing to give up to get what you want?
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
But I think that's just it though. Everybody wants something different. Like, I feel like we're trying to, just when you go on like the 12 or the 24, discussion, right? Like, so I know there's a bunch of people out there going to be like, what are you talking about? We love our 24s. And there's going to be other people who are like, no, 24s are awful. And like, I've worked both of them, and there are aspects of both that I really, really like. And
Absolutely.
that's just, to dovetail onto that conversation that you're having, like, okay, so what is the ultimate goal here? Well, for different people, that goal is different.
Yes.
Right. And so like, I don't know that we can do a one size fits all here. But I don't know how to adapt that in a way that helps us move forward as an industry in that other way, aside of working on, this safety voice that we have in those moments, aside of working on our listening voice or our safety listening in that moment, aside of being able to have that positive safety culture and have those discussions when it's needed, and having the grace to be able to have that from your crew members and your leadership team. Like, I think that those aspects are the backbone of what makes the other things in this industry that aren't the one size fits all work.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm off base on that. But
no, you're not off base at all. I think you're bringing up what's vital. And in my mind, I think that this is key. So I'll use this as another way to articulate what I believe would be a really good safety culture. Do you work for the organization where you or your peers feel comfortable? You can go in and have this conversation with your boss.
Sure.
Right. Mm-hmm. So you're not, and this is all about approach, right? This isn't a conversation about right or wrong. This is a conversation about curiosity. Yeah. So to the point, like, is anybody interested in maybe talking about this? Is it working? Are people happy? Are they healthy? Are we in a right path? Talking about being vulnerable. It's very uncomfortable to sit there and go in front of your boss or your manager and say, I'm tired. Like, I'm worn out, because this is a very difficult job. And, I live here in Dallas, Texas, right? Back in the day, like, I know this is one of y'all's favorites. Back when I used to fly, we were turning. Back in
my day.
Proof I do my homework, right? But our Dallas and Fort Worth base, you're turning 120 flights a month.
Wow.
And it's 107 degrees. Aircraft, I have photos of it. Cabin temperature is 130 degrees, and that's with the air conditioner on.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah, right, exactly. The best night, I've only slept really good 2 times in my life. First time was after my son was born, and the second was after my first shift, where I did like 6 flights in the 24. I went to bed at like 4 a.m. I was
pure
just
exhaustion.
Absolute. This is not good, and that was in year 1. But openly, I think it's can we even have a conversation about it?
Yeah.
Because to this point, it's not, do we all agree we're super happy with the way things are? I don't think so. It
No, I
doesn't
think
mean
there's
they're
always room for
bad.
improvement.
Right,
Right.
exactly. And I do think ultimately this is, if we were to look at our peers in the fire service, this is where they've done their research. They've actually done research, right? They've actually gone out and have done sampling research and tested people and gotten feedback, and people are participating. And there's a number of initiatives to improve that, collectively in that sort of an occupation. So I hope that's things that'll happen here, because it feels like there are some of these might be more difficult, and nobody maybe wants to go to 3 on, 3 off, 4 on, 4 off. I don't know
Right.
what the answer is. I don't want to open up that bag of worms.
Right. Sure.
But what we want to have is the culture to have the conversation.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And I know that we've kind of talked a lot about, those pressures maybe being internal or external, but in your research, have you found any common themes that maybe those pressures to fly are more organizationally present, or are they more personally present in those situations?
Oh, fascinating question. And it's one of those, like, if you were to open up the what made me want to do pressure to fly, it was actually not because of specifically pressure to fly. I created it as a surrogate.
Okay.
And the reason I created it as a surrogate is one of the other debates that we've heard since the time of man has been for-profit versus nonprofit.
Right.
And as a social researcher and as a researcher in general, you really can't use that variable as a way of drawing conclusions. Number one, because this is a very heterogeneous industry, right? It just
Right.
simply doesn't exist that there are for-profit and nonprofit organizations in air
Right.
medical transport. There are a few discrete organizations that are that way, but with the mixed use, mixed operator model, we end up having, crew members that are working for a nonprofit hospital, but the pilots are contracted, right? And so
Right.
there's all sorts
Right.
of different things.
Yeah.
So this is one of those other things that I couldn't stand going inside of discussion boards and peer groups and talking to folks as they're like, everybody's bad. It's like, no, they're not. So the reason I actually created the pressure to fly variable was an alternative method to understand organizational pressures as sort of a surrogate to profit status. Because safety culture stuff is out there, and it can be significantly improved through things like HIMSS accreditation and other like standardized
for sure.
processes. Those are good. The people who work in HIMSS accredited organizations feel more safe. I can promise you, my research shows that with statistical significance, unequivocally. But I wanted to find a better alternative. And so what we do find in this part is it is unfortunate. So I did ask people in my survey research if they identified as working for a profit or nonprofit organization. And fascinating, in the studies, all three of the studies I conducted, it ended up being about a 50-50 equivalent of participants either way. So it wasn't skewed heavily or the other. And then, of course, I collected the other data about pressure to fly and safety culture and these other factors. And undeniably, with statistical significance, people who identified as working for organizations that were for profit had or were experiencing higher pressures to fly and less safety culture than those who identified in working in organizations that were nonprofit.
Wow.
I don't know what that means.
Right.
But what I think is there's something happening in organizations where people have this identity because they're self-identifying, right? I'm not assigning them based on the operator status. Statistically, that's what my research shows. And I hope to be able to conduct more of it and get even bigger, broader populations. But that's almost 400 people, voluntarily participating in a very heterogeneous group, right? I didn't partner with any one organization because I did want to have what we call variance in the research, right? I wanted to have variability. But realistically, that's what the research shows.
And then what years was that for the research?
Yeah, this is 22 through 25. So
22 through 25.
Last 3 years.
So within the last,
And we also do things called controlling, right? Same thing we do in medical research where we attribute other factors. So I collected things like gender, tenure, role in the organization, tenure with the organization, and unfortunately holding all of those factors constant. None of them were actually statistically significant, and they didn't modify the effects. So there's something going on there, and I'm probably going to become a friend or an enemy of some people who might listen to this because that's absolutely not my judgment on what's happening. But
I think that's interesting when you bring up those numbers. Trying to like just digest that a little bit in my head and think through stuff, because you made a couple different statements in that people who work for CAMS accredited programs statistically feel safer.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't feel the pressure to fly.
You nailed it.
Yep.
You just hit it right on the head. You got it.
So, and not all CAMS accredited programs are for profit. Not all of them are not for profit, right?
You hit
So,
it.
like, I think it's interesting to me that like all of these factors can still exist within that same cohort, like that all of these different feelings or these different perceptions of, what it is at a daily, when I'm going to work, what pressures are going to be within systems that have all of those other things in place. So I am intrigued by what the research has shown, and I think it's going to be, interesting to see where that transition. Because like I look at my career and starting back flying in 2012, and seeing the transition, working for a couple different types of programs, whether it be the hybrid programs, whether it be for non-for-profit organizations, and seeing the different necessary philosophies. But I feel like a lot of the philosophies that I wasn't quite happy with early on, or that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, working for some of those other programs, or maybe where some of those pressures were there. I think that there have been a lot of changes for the positive, even within those organizations. So,
Sure.
I think that we are starting to see that transition. At least I hope that we are, that it doesn't matter whether you're profit or not for profit status, that the pressure to fly and the feeling of being safe in that program and having a safety voice are all moving in the right direction. I hope so. That's the general feeling that I have from the conversations that I've had with people both in and out of those particular organizations. But I still think that we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, undeniably. And what you just said really did hit the nail on the head. And the reason we can't really have this conversation be about for-profit, nonprofit is both organizations have fiscal fiduciary responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
There's
absolutely. You have to survive.
Yeah. That's why you have to take that. That's why we want to use a surrogate type measure. And so what is interesting is, yes, in the research that I did, CAMES status was not a predictor of pressure to fly, meaning that having CAMES accreditation or not having it didn't modify, if you will, the results of pressure to fly. But there's a loop around that, right? Because I definitely can show that in CAMES, so, accredited organizations, the employees feel safer. Safety leads to decreased pressure to fly. So there's a mechanism or transmitting mechanisms in there. But it is a fascinating dialogue that I hope the industry is courageous enough to take. Yeah. And I say that in the sense that it's a difficult topic and it causes a lot of emotions to come up, and then sort of pride and identity and these other elements that I hope we can set aside, or we can find the venue or the mechanism or the method to be able to set it aside and go, there are incredible operators on both ends of these spectrums. Mm-hmm. Where are we seeing the gap, right? And what do we see go wrong? And until recently, right, until 191 Sierra Foxtrot, the survival flight accident in 2019, the NTSB is getting off the hook on these, just saying pilot error. And really, it's not the only incident, but it's one of three where the NTSB actually came back and said, yep, no, the organization is at fault for this. And that's exactly how these things happen. People are not at fault. That's not how this works.
Processes, cultures, all of those things are factors in all of that, right? And this is not we're not going to solve that in this conversation, but I think it's important to have those open dialogues too.
But
it's not.
Yeah, I think that's it. We have to have that conversation, and Russell, my brain, there's so many things that that I'm thinking about, because, for doing this for as long as, Mike and I have, I feel we've seen a lot of things, and I think we relate to a lot of the things that we've talked about. But for me, my constant strive is I want to stay positive regardless of what's going on. And I feel that one of the only ways to do that, like you said, is we have to have these conversations. But at the same time, I don't want to become complacent. So with all these mechanisms, with all these reportings, with all these things that are in place, even when things are going well, and I don't want to reach that peak of Mount Stupid, and I'm complacent. So how do we maintain that? How do we maintain that positive momentum and going forward and not just becoming complacent because you're like, things are good. We have good dialogue. We talk about things. I can report anything I want. How do I avoid that?
I love the question. And there's a pretty easy way to answer it, which you might be surprised by. I would say that we've experienced 3 eras of safety. The first era of safety is more of this mindset of we haven't had an accident or they happen and not frequent enough. That means we're safe. And it sort of is this, okay, that's really not it.
Yeah.
The second era of safety is what I would call safety theater. And if you want to get really riled up, another fellow social scientist by the name of Sidney Decker, just a phenomenal researcher, has written many books, one of them in particular, The Safety Anarchist, which that should provoke your curiosity alone. It's one of the best I could ever reference. And that gets down to the path of safety theater and its safety policy. And I'll use this example. So James Reason's model of the Swiss cheese is part of this sort of criticism of safety theater. The fact that we put in too many barriers is actually part of the problem. I mean, that's like no criticism. Anybody that's done anything to help safety, God bless them, and they've done good. And I don't offer that criticism. But you actually run into too many procedures and policies. And that's where you have any given employee at any given time is probably referencing 600 policies right now at work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have like work as imagined and you have work as secured. The third era, and this is the one I think will help answer your question, is are we asking questions like, why do we get this right? So why are things like, what are we doing with this crew that things are actually going good? Let's go look at good marriages, right? Let's go look at the good crews. Let's go actually talk to people and ensure that these things are happening. And I'll share, I think that's through, in my impression, language. I pray that we can get rid of safety officers and we can have safety champions. I want to have safety advocates, right?
Yeah.
I would pray if there's any wish I could have is that we would eliminate close calls, we would eliminate near misses, and we would call those good catches. And we would recognize people for reporting good catches, right? I pray that some of those structural things we can begin to change in our narrative and in our actual language. It's not just the words that need to change. It's definitely the behavior.
But I think using the right words can invoke changing that behavior because it kind of reframes your mindset on how you define that. And that starts that process.
But that also goes back to, that's not how we've done it for the past 40 years, right? Like we've always looked for the problem and we've always focused on the problem. And like, I know, even within my own program, we were just having the conversations the other day about, revamping our debriefing process and working through things and, having it be somewhat a little bit more structured as we're going through it. And then I said to one of my coworkers, and I think that we also need to add in there what we did well.
Yes.
And all of a sudden there was a pause. They were like, I haven't really thought of it that way before.
Yes.
Because it's never been ingrained that we're supposed to go down that route.
Absolutely.
And I love that aspect of it, but I feel like we're only getting this like tiny sliver of what's happening by focusing on the bad things. We're missing all of those other phenomenal things. And I think that even if everything goes right, you can still learn from something. You can still reinforce something. You can still make it better.
Thanks to our sponsor, Copter Safety. Based in Finland, Copter Safety is the leading, globally approved simulator training center. They provide a full range of courses for AW139, AW169, H125, and H145 pilots. Customize your special missions training with realistic visuals and specialized instructors. Stay one step ahead of reality with Copter Safety.
All you got to do is tell stories, right? It's people like we get wrapped up in language. All you got to do is tell a story. When did things go right? Hey, like you saw the wires. I don't know about y'all. I have a sixth sense intuition for wires. Crossing wires on landing at 3:00 in the morning, I can smell them out. I don't know why. God bless. But I'll tell you on every flight, if I have that sixth sense, and we're going to talk about it. So let's tell that story, right? It is that key.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I love that. And I think that we do need to focus on that a little bit more. It is a total process change or mindset change, but Like, I don't know how to continually reinforce that aside of through those safety champions, but like we need to make that on the crew level. Like how do we remind each other as crew every single day that we're not focusing on what went wrong? That's a piece of it, but we need to also focus on what went right. Like how do we take that time to be like, okay, yes, let's digest this? Because I feel like so many times you get back from that call and they're like, yeah, do you have anything? No, I was all good. We're getting on all this. All right, I'm going to go do my charting.
Yeah, I have 4 hours of paperwork I got to get done.
Yeah, everything
right?
went fine. It's great. Like, but no, we need to like, let's take a second and actually have this conversation. I don't know how to get people on board with doing that sometimes.
Yeah.
I think you just got to do it. Do we just have to jump in and do it?
That's so you hit it, and I'll leave you. I guess I leave you with this reflection because it was a common question being a full-time adult and going back to getting a full-time, being a PhD student. I was working 30 hours a week just on my studies. I studied all Saturday, all Sunday, and I usually got up and studied between 5 and like 7:30 in the morning every morning. And I've had people out the years say, how did you stay motivated? I said, it had nothing to do with motivation. That was like done in day 2. It's discipline.
Yeah.
You do the work, right? Like when you're tired, you get up, you do the work, right? Whenever you want to do something else, you do the work. And honestly, I do think that's what a lot of this is it's us. This is back to that question, like, what are you willing to give up to get what you want? And I hope that people can spend some time reflecting on that, because there's nothing more that I want to see than, good safety outcomes and people learning and growing and challenging our norms and making it a better place to be.
No, for sure. And I don't disagree with that statement. I think it's easier said than done, though. Sometimes,
yes,
that is a very hard task to overcome. And I'm not arguing with where you're going on that. I think that we do need to be more disciplined about that. I think that we do need to be more structured in the way. And I think that structure is what helps to set up the discipline in the future, right? But at the same time, that's a difficult barrier to cross.
The good news is we're social creatures, so we model each other's behavior. And there's a famous video on YouTube of this guy. Oklahoma State actually did this not too long ago. The team is so awful that a couple of guys went up into some random section and took off their shirts and started waving them. You might have seen this on social media. And then before you know it, there's like 150 dudes up there waving their shirts. So like we model human behavior. So it's not like we have to wake up and this isn't a revolution. This is an evolution, right? So it is like it's some of the small stuff, and small things compound over time, and people will model your behavior. So you guys got it. You're all out there changing the world with what you're doing here in these conversations, and hopefully others, like you said, can be inspired or even provoked to carry that good work forward.
I appreciate that.
And I think we still have some like other hooks to talk about with the 3 to go on for no. I don't know if we want to open that.
I did want to get into that next. I was like, do you want to take that one away, or do you want me to take that one away? Because I'm dying to hear his response.
You can edit it out. You can edit it in.
No, let's. So I mean, man, because I think we briefly touched on this in Louisville, and it's again, we had an hour time slot, 5 questions, and I think it was like the 15-minute question, But
let me, before you get into this, Blake, though, I do want to preface this way. I believe the question that we picked for Russell in that safety panel was about 3 to go, 1 to say no, without knowing his prior stance on this.
For sure. Right.
We had right away, idea. He was like, I hate this question.
Yeah.
So anyway, continue, Blake.
No, I mean, I think I left that panel with, I think, more questions about the question than answer, and also a lot of self-revelation, I think, and Russell, you hit on it about that role identity.
Yes.
So can you expand on that? The 3 to go, 1 to say no. It is such a cliche, but
it is. Yeah. It's a safety blanket.
Right.
So this is a delicate slope, right? So if anything's going to evoke emotion in your listening audience, this might be it. So
brace yourselves, everyone.
Yes. Yeah. Like unequivocally, the motive, the intent here is clearly pure.
Sure.
However, right. When we pull it back, let's pull it back a layer. So what we're saying is at any given time, we're voicing the fact that everybody has a right to dissent, right? So we all need to agree and we all need to dissent. Well, the first thing is it's temporal. It's just you're basically even saying it in one moment in time. So 3 to go, 1 to say no. Like when? Like on departure or like the point of origin or like at any given time. So it number one, it has a time bound sort of limitation. 2, it makes me think, well, what's the opposite? I involuntarily do things that I don't want to do. Well, I don't want to ever work for an employer that I feel like I'm in a situation where they need to tell me that you need to not, you need to have the ability to say no to like, that sounds kind of interesting. What is really the crux and the challenge with the 3 to go, 1 to say no? It's not the intent. The motive is absolutely pure. It's a good thing.
Sure.
It's actually the operationalization of it.
Mm-hmm.
When we use that sort of language, when we look at what we talked about earlier with social norms, and when we think about how we influence our peers and how we work with people, it turns things into a dichotomy. And we don't make decisions as dichotomies. We don't sit there and go yes or no, or go or no. We process things. And so what we fail to capture in that is the conversation. What disturbed me is when I started interviewing crew members, and I asked them the same question I asked you, which is on purpose. One of my favorite things to do is to hear other people talk, not myself, contrary to how this interview might have gone, is the fact that, well, what describe your safety culture? And people stumble all over it. And I sadly heard many people say, well, we have 3 to go, 1 for no.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh boy.
It's so much more than that.
My, oh my. Okay. So yeah, you're right. I'm glad that they're saying that. I mean, but what else? And they would use this sort of like shortcut. And that's what I mean by the safety blanket. Because realistically, it assumes social equivalence. And that's just simply not true.
Yeah.
We have junior crew members. We have tenured crew members. We have pilots who are incredibly trained and talented, and they know what they're doing, and I trust their judgment. And it is not a basis of equality. We want to have that conversation. So I hope that I've thought about this a lot because I'm, contrary to public opinion, I always like want to go around pissing people off on this topic. I definitely believe the think it, say it has to be the new mantra. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking it, you need to say it. You need to have that. I don't care if it's informative, it's inquisitive, if it's cautionary, if it's strong.
Just say it.
If you are thinking, just say it.
Yeah.
And that, for me, is the most important part, is that we're entering a conversation, we're having a dialogue. And if anything, I can begin to test bounds and ideas, because I'll promise you, the thing that scares me the most about 3 to go, 1 for no, is it asserts this ideology of like right or wrong. In any time, I think in social circumstances, that puts you on the losing end of the edge. I mean, it's just brilliant concept. Yes, we want people to have agency. Yes, we want people to know that they have authority and the capacity to make decisions. Realistically, when we put them in the scenario, I want them to have a conversation. So if they're thinking it, say it. And you're going to find out really quick they're thinking it too. I promise you they are. This is, and I'll tie one more piece on here. I think it's huge. So one of the reasons I hate the blaming culture, and I cannot stand reading NTSB reports, is they all like to attribute error and accidents to the pointy part of the spear, right? We have these big complex organizations at the base, and we need all these people doing all these safety things, which are good. But whenever something goes wrong, if you read the NTSB reports, and I've read all of them, pilot failed to, pilot failed to, pilot failed to, and we learned nothing from that. The reason that I find such a problem with that, take the most unbelievable accidents you can think of, is we like to go down this, like, what were they thinking? What were they doing? And we turn even ourselves into this judgment type conversation. In safety psychology, there's a principle called the local rationality principle. The local rationality principle means that we hire reasonable people, and they make the best, most rational decision they can, given their current situation, resources, goals, opportunities, and scenario. That means that we're rational people making rational decisions. So whenever you look at something that seems so completely unbelievable, like they're brain dead, no. They were making a very rational decision. And when I think about this 3 to 1, say 3 to go, 1 for no, it's like I'm trying to couple those two concepts and go, even in these scenarios where we see outlandish things like pilots texting, they worked in an environment, they worked in a culture, they worked in a scenario where that was acceptable. It's not the person, it's the situation.
Yeah.
And so when we try to go back to that single person level, we lose fidelity. So maybe more than what you're interested in, but I hope that people will just, if you think it, say it. And yeah,
it's a necessary conversation that we have to have. And like you said, people like to say, oh, well, it's like the fail safe. Oh, we operate on 3 to go, 1 to say no. So you're good. You can speak up at any time. But really, can I really? And I love what you brought up. At what point? Is it before we lift? Is it while we're there? Who decides that? What decides that? And then how is that perceived? I feel like that's such a great analysis. Like you said, peeling back that layer. And there's many more layers, I'm sure. But it's a conversation that needs to happen.
Just talk, right? Just talk. And if people are quiet, be worried.
My coworker is going to test if I'm quiet that I'm usually plotting or scheming something. Or they're like, "What's wrong? You're not saying anything." Yeah,
you might be angry.
But so I like where you're going with that, and but I think that sometimes that 3 to go, 1 to say no is, like you said, in the basis of it is a positive thing. The basis of it is something that is meant in good nature. And I think that for the most part that it probably does work industry wide if the right culture is in place to support that, right?
Yes.
Like not just saying that, yes, we have 3 to go and 1 to say no, that we actually have a process in place that when one does say no, like they feel empowered to do so, that they are recognized for making a positive decision, that they are bringing up points as to why they're not wanting to go on those things. And so I think that the 3 to go, 1 to say no works if that culture is present.
Yeah.
Yes.
But everyone has to feel as though they have enough of a, I'm going to use your terminology here, safety voice to make that call in the first place. And I like where you're going with the think it, say it, because I think that encompasses more of the entire crew in whatever level of experience you are or variability you have within your career. So, you have the one brand new crew member who's 6 months off of orientation, who has, never had a flight job before, who is just enamored and just wants to go on everything.
Yes.
You have that middle of the road clinician, and you have the old crusty pilot, or you have the old crusty medic, right?
Yeah.
Who has been doing this for, more than a hot second. Blake, I'm putting you and I in that category. So, I think that the think it, say it allows each of those people to have that voice in that situation. Hopefully, not without, or with undue pressure that may come with taking the experience part of it out of it. So, and I think that there was oftentimes a blanket at point for 3 to go, 1 to say no, for someone to say, nah, I'm not going to do it. And they don't have to give me an explanation and go right back to their bunk and go to bed, right?
It's true. Right.
The think it, say it allows for more open and honest conversation to really express why you're feeling that particular concern, or what is causing you to have that kind of issue at that moment in time. And I don't use issue as in a personal issue. I'm saying issue is like this situation doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the joy of perhaps a sign of a scholar is one's ability to argue with themselves. And I'll say this from my own perspective. I would love and embrace a 3 to go, 1 to no culture if I ask them, okay, that's great. And then I say, well, tell me a story, right? Tell me the story about when you've had 3 to go, 1 to say no, and how that's worked in your organization. And if they answer me by saying, well, every turn down that we have, regardless of the reason, is collected, and we publicly share those, and we recognize the people who make what could be considered a difficult decision, right? Marginal weather, crew fatigue. If we recognize those people for speaking up and for sharing their concern, you're going to suppress the people automatically who are doing that because they want to sleep and they're just lazy. Because you're doing public recognition, you're actually raising the social bar. Mm-hmm. But if your answer is, I don't know. Or maybe one time 7 years ago, this one guy used it, and that's the only story, and that's not a living. That's not a living culture.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
we really wanted people to be able, and that's where I just love asking folks, like, well, tell me a story. Like, what does it look like to you? When was the last time you heard that done?
Right.
How is it handled in an organization? Or is it even talked about at all?
No, I like that a lot. And I think that kind of also ties into, where, so obviously all the things we've been discussing here, the culture, the voice, the ability to, think it, say it, all of that ties into having that, crew level interaction, that crew level
Yes.
ability to converse on that level and have that confidence to know that you're being heard, or that you are, that there's trust enough that you are listening to your crew. But that's got to come from the top down, right?
Yeah.
Like that's got to be set from the very get-go, from the time you walk in the door, from the people who you are looking up to as your leaders, right? And so I think that they play a very important role, both not just in their own organization, but setting the tone for the industry, because a lot of these leaders are over huge agencies that are across the United States. So, like, what role do they play in maybe establishing or managing and maybe maintaining like this overarching positive safety culture and safety voice?
Thank you to our sponsor, Spectrum AeroMed. Spectrum AeroMed is your trusted partner in air medical solutions. Experience safety and innovation with their customized interiors, designed for both rotor and fixed-wing aircraft. Elevate your patient care with Spectrum AeroMed. For more information, visit spectrum-aeromed.com.
Love it. I love it. And I know, because I've listened, because I do my homework, that the conversation about the difference between leadership and management is something y'all like to talk about. So you hit the nail on the head. So what we're talking about fundamentally there is safety leadership. I absolutely could not agree with you more that the way that we actually exhibit from a top-down approach safety leadership is through presence. Leaders are present, right? They're out inspiring, they're learning, they're motivating, and they're participating in the cultures that they have. And I can say that this is a really easy one. If there's some manager or an executive or a leader out there listening to this that makes them uncomfortable, then I hope it does. But when's the last time you were out at the bases? When's the last time you were out, not only out there and you weren't doing something that was like a managerial task, right? Yeah. We're not out doing audits. We're not out doing inspections. We're out having conversations about how are things going.
Yeah.
Once again, asking the question, what's the dumbest thing that we have you do every day that makes your work potentially unsafe? If you don't have the courage to ask the question of your employees, what's the dumbest thing we ask you to do here? And be prepared to have the answer to that question, you need to check yourself.
Man.
And honestly, that's leadership, because you realize there's stupid stuff we do in organizations every day that people just like stack onto the stack of stupid. And the next thing you know, we're doing a lot of it. But fundamentally we have, and I mentioned this on the safety panel, is like, what's the one thing if we're starting a new organization? I think the question was.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the presence of leadership. We have management all over the place. But if you're a base lead or whatever the term is, if you're a regional leader or manager, I hope people can embrace the joy that you can have in people's lives by being present as a leader in talking about your values, talking about the values of the organization, talking about things that you care about, like their safety. That is how we actually change and shift culture. Otherwise, it's a poster and it's a picture on an email. But we really have to be present. And that's in many organizations, in many industries, what we're suffering with is the lack of authentic leadership.
There's a lot of titles out there.
There is. Yep. There's a lot of good people trying to do a lot of good things. We just need people to be human and realize that we're all trying to help. But yeah, it's leadership.
I think that brings up a lot of, and I'm just processing a lot of what you just said there, because I think that the presence is oftentimes meant from the leadership side.
Yeah.
As though they have every intention of doing that. But I feel as though oftentimes in this industry, it gets so easy to get caught up in this crisis on today, or this project that's due tomorrow, or the overarching thing that we need to worry about next week, or balancing the budget, or all of these other things that occur that, I think it's easy when leaders are first in the role. They want to get to know the crews. They want to be present. They want to find out what they can do to improve upon things. And then I think that slowly starts to fade. And I don't think in a lot of circumstances that that's intentional,
No, I agree.
but I think that it's easy to get caught up in all of the other factors that are going on to help keep an organization running full steam ahead, that those are the easiest things to also get brushed under the rug. Right.
But what's the pursuit for that? Like what's the overarching goal? You know what I'm saying? Like, because there's so many tasks that are put on our leadership or management, whatever you want to call it. There's so many things that they have to do.
Oh yeah.
Like you said,
absolutely.
we have to keep the organization running, but at what cost? And what's the pursuit? What are we achieving? What are they achieving by doing that?
That's a fun conversation. So I'll tell you what, I love it. I've been in a leadership role, an executive role for almost 30 years. And I think this is I think it's one of the most important things you could discuss. I am biased. I am a Marine. And contrary to what people believe, Marines have a very bottom-up philosophy. There is, as a leader in the Marine Corps, there is nothing more important than the grunt Marine. They are always more important than me. And the officers espouse that. They demonstrated their behaviors. And it's wonderfully articulated in Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last. And it's manifested by the fact that as a fleet Marine, the enlisted Marines eat before the officers. Like as an NCO, you don't eat before your platoon. I mean, like it's literally an espoused trait. I think that those are just values. Those are just like preferences that we have to talk about. And one of the challenges, I think, is, and this has nothing to do with the industry, this happens to do with our society, is that we do have a hierarchical society where people do feel like because they have a title, they're more important. And I fundamentally disagree with that. I actually believe, personally, the people who are closest to the work are more important than the leader. Leaders have an important role, but guess what? In the absence of the leader, the work will continue.
Yes. Exactly.
I might get something done with me for saying that out loud. Realistically,
the calls are still going to come in. Someone is going to call for help.
Yeah.
And someone's going to have to go.
This is an unrelated thing, but I believe in it 100%. As a leader and an executive in the organizations I've worked in, if I'm going on vacation, I do not take a work phone. I remove my email from my personal device because guess what? It's going to be okay. But that's something that we have to espouse and talk about. And I applaud what the industry is doing in their medicine to grow and develop leadership. I think that it's phenomenal to see that happen. But this really gets back to some basic stuff. And it's challenging because it is a generational element. We need to grow leaders and have people grow and realize that I am here because of you, not for you.
Right.
And that's a very different mindset that it's really tricky to do.
If you lay that groundwork and you set up that infrastructure for your employees to be successful,
You nailed it.
you as a leader can have that trust that things are going to continue to run when you have to do X, Y, or Z other menial task.
Yep.
That you have the ability to foster those relationships and grow from the bottom up. But you have to set that framework and that structure to give them the ability to do that.
I have said 1,000 times in my career, as a leader, my sole responsibility is to create an environment where my employees can be as successful and as effective as possible, and to provide them the resources to do their work. That's my job.
Yeah.
I don't make any important decisions. I mean, I don't literally do things that are change the world. It's to create the environment where you can be successful. The quagmire that is, I need the employee to meet me in the middle. Yeah. Right. That's where I need people to come to work well rested.
Yeah.
I need people to speak up when they're feeling unsafe. But that when you meet those, it's like any other relationship in life. We have to have this sort of mutual meeting in the middle. But it is a vital conversation that we.
It almost sounds in addition to what we talked about, the foundation, you need
Yeah.
to have expectations
Yes.
as well.
Absolutely.
These are my expectations as a leader.
Yeah.
This is the groundwork that we've put in place for you to be successful. Your contract coming to work here is that you're going to meet me in the middle, and we're going to grow this and build this
Yeah.
together.
Absolutely. And then how the organization responds. This is where just culture becomes huge, and which is part of the whole safety culture element. If your organization disciplines people for minor safety violations, infractions, that kind of stuff, it's destroyed. Like the just culture is gone. And unfortunately, we're seeing a tremendous assault on just culture in healthcare alone, just between the prosecutions of healthcare providers that are doing things like go back to that local rationality principle. I mean, they made a decision that made sense at the time. But at the end of the day, if we're not actually using a restorative just culture, if we're not ensuring that people are not only are you not disciplined, but we're going to have a conversation around where did this happen? I look at it very similar to clinical medicine, right?
Mhm.
So when we look at medicine, you can say medicine errors. The only way you're really going to get in trouble in medicine is if you do some sort of egregious act, right? And you actually intentionally try to hurt somebody. Like it's not at risk. I'm talking like you intend to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
I think safety
negligible.
discipline needs to be in that same space.
100%. Yeah.
Most
100%.
at-risk behaviors are not some culpable individual. This is a collection of like organizational espoused behaviors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we terminate and discipline employees for mild to even moderate safety infractions, we've eliminated that from our organizational identity. And now the employees that are still there go, ooh, I'm never going to talk about that because you're going to get taken out.
Right.
If we retain these environments, if we retain these people in a just culture, what do they become? Storytellers, right? So if you had, so I'll use an example, right? You tugged an aircraft, pulled it in the hangar, you ran into something, you didn't have somebody out there spotting the aircraft. We can terminate that employee right away, right? No doubt. Okay, well, what good does that do? We just invested in this career and this occupation, this employee, and now they're gone. It's like, that doesn't teach people to
Now we
do
have to fix the
right?
aircraft and hire somebody new and
Right.
train them.
Right. So keep them around. Have them actually put on a session about the importance of tugging aircraft, having a spotter. I mean, I'm not trying to, it's not social punishment, but it's restorative justice. And that's all part of this element of, but that's leadership. And you got to be present to be leaders.
Yeah.
Decisions are made by people who show up. And if a leader isn't there, and I mean just like routinely there and present and participating, the people who show up are the employees, and they're going to be the ones making the decisions. So, sad but true.
Yeah, no, I love that. Kind of like there's something on your mind. I can hear it. I can see it.
No, I think
I've exhausted you at this point.
no, gosh, no. I mean, I could talk about this all night. I just think that this whole conversation is just, again, I'm so appreciative of it, and the fact that I hope people can relate, because these are conversations that we should have. It's not good, bad, indifferent. It's just about, let's talk about these things, and let's, like you said, there's expectations. It's a two-way street. I have to give, you have to give something, but we can all take away something from this and learning about just how we're thinking. And the thing that's really sticking with me is when you're talking about that role identity and really what it is to really mean what it is that we do. You know, I think about from day one when I stepped onto an ambulance and wearing that uniform and going out and answering the call, you know, one knee pain at a time, you know, as you know how it kind of starts, but it's so much more than that. And I think I'm just replaying that, and it really makes me think of how I do my job, why I do my job, and really having these conversations and courage that I'm not alone. And I guarantee you a lot of other people are thinking the same way.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. And I'll offer one of the most moving experiences I had in my public safety career. The former fire chief for the city of Indianapolis, I was at a conference. I mean, this was like 25 years ago, was criticizing, if you will, in a very weird way, the glory that we put on firefighters killed in the line of duty. We're really good at funerals, but we're not really good at telling people how much we care for them when we're here. Right? Like looking over to your partner and your friend and going, man, I love you, dude. Like you're the world to me. And what you do, like, but we'll do that all day long at a funeral. But the point is it's like, we care about each other now. Let's talk about it now. Let's do that today. And the reason he brought that up is he said, when you look at line of duty deaths, and I think this is true across any industry, you like to promote this idea of like bravery and courage and all these things that are like role identity, right? Like, I'm brave. People don't die in the line of duty that way. They die scared. They die alone. And what we want to do is let people know that that's not what we want to have happen. Like, we want people to have the conversation before those tragic events happen, and we can get rid of them as much as possible. We want people to call for help when they think that they need it. And if we end up in this situation where our role identity, right, the uniform, the badge, the helmet, if all that stuff is obstructing good judgment, it happens. It happens day in, day out. So, it's twofold, right? It's slowing down to appreciate the people we have in front of us right now. But then it's number two, going like, don't die of doubt. Right? Don't let that be the thing that gets you, because it's not a moment of bravery. It's a moment of fear. And we don't ever want to think that way, but we got to. And it's uncomfortable stuff that, like, as humans, as people who care for each other, and we're all here because we love humanity. We want to help people. Yeah, it's tough stuff. And it's the tough conversations we got to have.
And I think that's where, a lot of the conversations that Blake and I have had with this podcast have been heavy focused on mental health and heavy focused on safety. And I think that they will continue to be, because those are two messages that we need to continue to move forward. And they're so intertwined in so many different ways. That if we can continue to elevate both of those, I think that will hopefully help to make sure that the industry is moving in the same direction. I believe that. I hope that is the truth, and I hope that is continuing down that track, because this is two topics that are so incredibly important and that are so incredibly sometimes dependent or reliant on each other too.
Yeah. Well, you guys are making the world a better place. Like, I hope you're as proud of yourselves as I am of you, because honestly, this is the mechanism which we change the world. I mean, this is it. This is the work, and you're doing great. So thank you. It means a lot to me.
Well, thank you. We couldn't do it without people like you to share the same passion, that message, to really make sure if we can hit one person, impact one person, one decision, then we've made a difference. And that's all we want. That's the whole part of public safety, aviation, and Echo, and the whole Vertical Valor family, like everybody. That's all our mission is, really to just, we can make one change, one positive, and we've done our job.
We really appreciate it, Russell. This has been a phenomenal conversation.
Absolutely.
I know that this is sometimes not the easiest conversations to have, but I appreciate you coming on and having these discussions with us. I think that's the first step, is being able to open up and be honest and real, and have it come from a place of love and passion and desire, just like we put into taking care of our patients every single day, or just like we put into going out there and flying. And I think that these are some very real conversations that we need to start having on the base level, and then on the organizational level, and continuing to push each other forward and better this industry. It is the best job in the world, but we need to continue to make it that way. So really appreciate you coming on and having those discussions. This has just been an absolutely phenomenal discussion, and can't thank you enough.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you both. Thank you both. I'm here any way I can help. Let me know.
Appreciate
At least I'll provoke somebody. I don't know how much. Hopefully there's
nothing wrong with a little cattle prodding, right?
Yeah, it's just to keep you human.
I ask people to suspend their disbelief. We can at least say that. Start with that.
Yeah. You put the disclaimer out there. I'll give you that.
Absolutely. But there's nothing wrong with that.
All right,
well, Russell, thank you again. Really appreciate it. And thank you again to our listeners out there for your continued support of the Vertical Helicast platform and the Valor Flight Crew podcast. If you guys aren't already listening, make sure you head on over to verticalhelicast.com and check out the other podcasts there with the MHM family, Hangar Z podcast, Helicopter podcast, Real Rescue podcast, and the Vertical MRO. I promise you'll enjoy those conversations just as much. Until next time, have a good one, you guys. Be safe.
See you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Valor Flight Crew podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Spectrum AeroMed. Spectrum AeroMed is your trusted partner in air medical solutions. Experience safety and innovation with their customized interiors, designed for both rotor and fixed-wing aircraft. Elevate your patient care with Spectrum AeroMed. For more information, visit spectrum-aeromed.com. Thanks to our sponsor, Copter Safety. Based in Finland, Copter Safety is the leading, globally approved simulator training center. They provide a full range of courses for AW139, AW169, H125, and H145 pilots. Customize your special missions training with realistic visuals and specialized instructors. Stay one step ahead of reality with Copter Safety.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
That wraps up this episode of the Valor Flight Crew podcast. A sincere thank you to Russell Griffin for sharing his research, his experience, and the human perspective that so often gets overlooked in conversations about safety. As you head back to your own environment, whether it's the aircraft, the comms desk, or the hangar, we invite you to carry one thought forward. Safety culture isn't built in policy manuals. It's built in the everyday moments of trust, communication, and accountability we offer each other. If today's conversation challenged you, encouraged you, or gave you something to bring back to your crew, we hope you'll share it and engage in the crucial conversations that help make your organization and our industry safer. Be sure to subscribe, review, and connect with us on the socials so we can continue bringing these meaningful discussions to the forefront of our industry. Until next time, stay intentional, stay connected, and as always, be safe out there.